Welcome to Real George's Backroom. Tonight, the Backroom takes you to the Skyway in Scotia, New York, where Dianne Pine conducts her first Backroom interview with a band who is making waves all over America, R.E.M. They're from Athens, Georgia, and they're with us tonight on the Backroom. New James Bond releases, Octopussy and Never Say Never Again. Later, Bruce talks with Bowtie Blotto about Blotto's song Goodbye, Mr. Bond, and their admiration for the Bond classics. To start us off, Real George presents a band from Ohio, the Screamin Urge. They set up their own tour of the East Coast, which included Albany's own 288 Lark Street. Screamin Urge's high-energy music fit well at 288, and their independently produced album is a true representation of their urge to be heard. Stay tuned to the Backroom, because, as always, there is much, much more on the Backroom. Much, much more on the Backroom. And now, welcome to the Backroom for the first time, the Screamin Urge.
I was going out today, going to fly in the sky. I was going out today, going to live for your ride. I was going out today, going to fly in the skies. I was going out today, going to live for your ride.
My name is Dianne Pine, and we're sitting in the dressing room at the Skyway in Scotia, New York, and I'm doing an interview with R.E.M., which just left the stage, for Real George's Backroom. Band members can introduce themselves. You are?
I'm Michael.
And you are?
I'm Peter.
And how do you think things went tonight?
Superbly well. The audience is really nice. The club people were really nice. I had a great time.
I thought everything went really well myself. I really enjoyed it. It's probably, like I said before, it was the most exuberant thing I've seen in about a year and a half.
We have a record that's more or less a hit, and people are a bit more familiar with what we do and know what to expect to a certain degree. So the audiences have been real open-minded and real fun, but by and large, everywhere we go.
You agree with that?
Yeah, it's a lot more fun now. It's a lot easier. Like you said, you're more familiar with some of the songs. We can play some of our older stuff, and people are familiar with that, and we can also do some of our newer material and kind of surprise the older fans.
But have you been getting a similar reaction all the way along down the road?
Fairly similar. Yeah.
Fairly similar. What parts of the country do you think support you more, I suppose? Is it
Minneapolis has always been way far behind us. They really jumped on us from the very beginning. Of course, Georgia and the Carolinas, which is where we're from. We always did real good in New York City. And
Los Angeles last time was really amazing.
Do you feel that in these particular cities you have to live up to a standard?
We don't
live
ever
down
feel
to it if possible.
Live down to it.
We don't ever feel like we have to live up to anything. Not really.
We do this for fun, and you know, one of the reasons the last few encores were so silly is that we don't feel that we have to live up to that whole rock star image of going on stage and, you know, like U2 being dramatic or melodramatic or whatever. We get up and play and we mess around, and sometimes we're bad, sometimes we're good, and it should be fun for us before anything else, and we've been having fun on our tours.
So you're still into this for the fun of it, basically?
You couldn't pay me enough to do this if I didn't enjoy it, because I work, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you know, 11 months of the year.
How many nights have you been on the road so far this tour?
This tour isn't too long. It's only been a week, but we've only had a week and a half off or 2 weeks between our last 7-month-long tour. So we've been more or less on the road full-time since beginning of March.
Beginning of March. And have you been certain cities you said were stronger points for you. Does that mean you get more radio airplay, or just that
people come out more and they were more familiar with the material, say in Minneapolis than they are in Nebraska. But Nebraska's really cool too. Like Los Angeles, Peter mentioned, it took them about a year to really catch on to what we were doing. And they really caught on like that overnight.
Yeah, they didn't have a clue as to what we were doing. We were just, I mean, everybody, journalists, people would come to see us, we go, well, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense, really, as far as LA goes. It didn't, and then this last time we were there, we were more or less the event of the week, as kind of disgusting as that may be, you know. We still went into this big ritzy disco and played a silly set, you know, and played just what we normally do.
You know, a similar set to the one you've just done right now.
Sure, we do whatever comes in our mind. And we play, you know, we have a set list and we stick to it when we feel like it. And then, you know, there are plenty of times like tonight where we take requests. We played a couple songs tonight we've never played before. I mean, we've never ever played Don't Fear the Reaper. That was someone yelling at the audience. Someone yelled it out, and if one of us knows it, we'll give it a shot. Just, you know, just to keep it loose. We certainly don't want to become too professional. Most bands die because of their professionalism. We played a T-Rex song that is probably one of the sillier songs ever written. I'm a 20th century boy. You know, I mean, it's you've got to feel just a little bit silly doing it, but it's so rock and roll starish that we think it's funny. It's kind of ironic that we get up there and play this really ridiculous, dumb song and enjoy it. The only really good thing about being slightly more popular, other than having people show up, is that you've got the latitude to try different things. Most bands that get popular just milk it to death, play their hits, and are relatively boring, and we think it gives us the opportunity to do things that we normally wouldn't be able to do.
Which would be what?
Well, half the songs we played tonight we haven't recorded. Most bands wouldn't dare do that for some reason, I don't know why. My favorite bands do. I remember seeing Elvis Costello in '77. He played, you know, half his first album and his whole second album, and his second album wasn't released or anything. And that excites me. We feel that it gives us a little bit more latitude to take chances. You know, you can work with your popularity rather than have the popularity work you.
How did it feel to be on the David Letterman show?
It didn't feel like anything. It was such an antiseptic type thing. The people at the crew were real nice, and David was very nice. But it just was nothing, you know. We played, and it didn't make me feel good, didn't make me feel bad. I was glad it was over.
Why?
You
just didn't enjoy the situation?
I did not enjoy it either. It was just, you know, I mean, it was a bland experience. We got played 2 songs. There's no chance to really do what we want to do, which is play for a long time and you know, work up some energy or some passion or whatever. You know, no bad feelings, no good feelings. It was just, you know, a nothing aspect.
Would you go on another television talk show? I mean,
sure, why not? You know, I mean, it sells records, and it was mildly amusing. And when I'm 50 years old, it'll make a great chapter in my memoirs.
Are you gentlemen ready?
I guess so.
Okay, and if I don't get a chance to see you before the end of the show, thank you very much for being here, folks. Nice meeting you guys. Ladies and gentlemen, R.E.M.
The idea that you'd have some kind of feeling about an experience like that, which is, it's like going, how do you feel like going to the dentist? Well, you know, you go to the dentist because you do it, you know, or, you know, you clock in at your job because it's part of your job. That was part of my job, whereas playing is part of my hobby. And
do you consider everything you've done tonight just part of your hobby, something that you...
Sure. I get paid for it, you know, but...
Makes it all the better.
It was a hobby when it started, and it's now just a very, you know, full-time hobby, which is okay with me.
How do you feel for opening for your friends here?
Oh, it's fun.
Fun all over the place?
Yeah, they get the crowds. We have fun people. We like them and they're fun too. Like them. Yeah. All I have to say. And we have good food too. That's just here.
You've been backstage with R.E.M. and one member of Let's Act. This is Dianne Pine, and you've been watching Real George's Backroom.
See the same Real George that takes his clothes off?
Hello, my name is Hallenbeck, Bruce Hallenbeck, and I'm here in the back room today to tell you about the Battle of the Bonds Round 2. Last summer, you'll recall, Roger Moore starred in Octopussy, his 6th film as James Bond. It was a smashing success. And now we have the return of Sean Connery to the role of James Bond in Never Say Never Again. This time, Connery is in a remake of his 5th Bond film, Thunderball. Now, you may be wondering why remake a film that's less than 20 years old and is considered a classic of its kind. Well, the answer, in brief, is this: for the money. That's why films are made, and that's why this particular film deal went through. It was a court case involving executive producer Kevin McClory, which went on for some years, until finally he was granted the right to remake Thunderball, and that's what he did, and why he did it: for the money. Now, about Never Say Never Again, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that Sean Connery is indeed in fine form as James Bond, with his hairpiece intact. In fact, at age 53, he doesn't look any different than he did in From Russia with Love 20 years ago. The bad news is that, unfortunately, this film was not made by the usual production team that's made all the 13 other 007 epics. It was made in the south of France, mostly by a British company, but it doesn't have the posh veneer, the slickness of the usual 007 films. For one thing, we don't have the exciting John Barry music score. We have a score by Michel Legrand, sung by Lani Hall, which isn't quite up to the standard of most James Bond films. And then there's the matter of the stunt work, which isn't up to the standard of most of the other 007 epics either. We don't have any opening smashing stunt, as in most of the other films. And the reason is actually because most of the world's greatest stuntmen were involved in making Octopussy at the same time Never Say Never Again was being produced. But, on the other hand, you've got Sean Connery, and you've also got some very good acting in some of the supporting roles. For example, the brilliant Austrian actor Klaus Maria Brandauer plays Mr. Largo, who is the villain of the piece, and he plays it quite differently than most James Bond villains are played. In fact, he seems to be rather a nice chap when you first meet him. He gives donations to children's charities, but he also happens to want to destroy the world, so nobody's perfect. We also have Kim Basinger playing a more down-to-earth Bond heroine than usual. In fact, good old 007 takes quite a fancy to her, which for him is quite unusual. And then there's Barbara Carrera as the ultimate femme fatale, Fatima Blush. She has one of the more spectacular scenes in the film when she explodes. One of the most enjoyable scenes in the film is a rather strange video game played between Mr. Brandauer and Mr. Connery. It's rather a joy to see two great actors really enjoying themselves in the film, and they certainly did in this scene. And there is some good stunt work too, to be fair. But, as I said before, it doesn't quite match the standards set by the rest of the series. And, of course, last year's Octopussy was a hard one to top. After all, its theme song was all-time high, and it was perhaps an all-time high for the series. In terms of money, it made more than any other film in the series in this country. And, of course, it was a very popular film with all age groups, as all the Bond films are. And it's very, very difficult to top scenes such as Roger Moore hanging onto an airplane for his dear life at the very end of the film, which is certainly one of the highlights of Octopussy. There isn't anything quite like that in Never Say Never Again, unfortunately. It's a very enjoyable film. It's great fun to see Connery back in action again. But as far as the Battle of the Bonds is concerned this year, I'm afraid I'll have to give the award to Roger Moore for Octopussy. But Sean, you put up a jolly good fight. I'm Bruce Hallenbeck in the Backroom. This is Bruce Hallenbeck in the Backroom, and I'm sitting here with Bowtie Blotto, who of course is a member of the band Blotto from good old Albany, New York. And you may have seen their MTV videos, you may have heard their song, Goodbye, Mr. Bond. Well, hello, Bowtie, and how are you today?
I'm fine, Bruce. Thank you.
That's a very wonderful, sinister laugh you have there. And is that naturally acquired, or did you just invent that for the song?
I think it was always in me, but I never used it until we rehearsed the song. And then I tapped a hidden resource in me, and out it came.
I could tell when I first heard Goodbye, Mr. Bond. I think it was when J.B. Scotts was still alive.
Right.
I could tell that you guys knew something about the films, because it does seem to be the case that in almost every James Bond film there is a point at which the villain will say, "Goodbye, Mr. Bond," right before he's going to shoot him or before he's going to laser beam him to death or whatever it is. Now, Broadway actually wrote the song.
Right.
Is he kind of a James Bond buff, or how did he come to write it?
Well, actually, we're all James Bond buffs, and lots of times when we were traveling, we would, go see the movies together, or when they were on TV, we'd go over to somebody's house and have a pizza party and watch James Bond. And all the little cliched phrases that are used in the song, we used to say back and forth to each other while we were riding around in the van and playing around. And one day Broadway came in with this song that he had put together out of all those phrases.
So it's kind of a homage to 007, I guess you could say.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Now, let's get the dirty stuff out in the open here. I saw you in a magazine called Bondage. Now, how did you end up in a magazine with a title like that?
Well, it's actually, for somebody that doesn't know, I think it's a journal of the James Bond fan club or something like that. And the person who edits that magazine, Rich Schenkman, is a friend of ours. And, he knew the song Goodbye, Mr. Bond from our doing it. He'd been to see us and asked us if he could. I think he reprinted the words, and also we took a picture, sort of a humorous picture with, we all sort of acted like we were the various James Bond villains. I wore a pair of bloody rubber gloves or something for that. I still got them.
Do you root for the villain in the Bond films, or do you root for Bond?
I think I enjoy the villains a lot because they're so, sinister and outrageous. But it's good to see James Bond win in the end.
What's your favorite James Bond movie?
I think Goldfinger.
That seems to be most people's favorite. Yeah. Do you have a video of Goodbye, Mr. Bond?
Well, no, we've always wanted to do one, but it's the song is quite long, and there's so many things we'd like to do that it would be a very ambitious and expensive undertaking. Oh, yeah. Well, the second verse has a thing about the martinis.
Oh, shaken, not stirred.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let me think. Well, in the last verse, there's a line, it's my favorite line. He goes, "You single-handedly outwit my guards, make love to my woman, beat me at cards." which I think James Bond is invincible.
Yes, he never loses cars. I've never seen him lose yet. And he never seems to make love to a woman without her coming over to his side eventually.
Oh, definitely. Just tell me with this, how do you play Banco anyway?
I have no idea. All I know is you say card.
Yeah? You get it with a big paddle and you...
Yeah,
go
right.
back and forth.
I never could tell if he won or not, but I figured he must win.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, obviously you guys know your stuff about 007 because all those phrases are very well known to us Bond buffs, and especially the line about shaken, not stirred, which is, in fact, I caught a Bond movie that made a mistake in that respect. You only live twice. Somebody said to Sean Connery, you like your martinis stirred, not shaken, right? And he said, yes. So somebody goofed.
And that guy got stabbed through the wall.
That's right. I think that's why he got stabbed.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that, because when Broadway wrote the song, he had shaken, not stirred, and I told him, no, it's stirred, you know, because of that movie. Right. So we changed it. Then we did it that way for a while, and then there was a big discussion, and we changed it back. And I always thought, gee, I couldn't have heard that wrong.
I think what it was maybe Connery as Bond was trying to be polite to the guy. You know, and just saying, okay, I'll take it stirred this time.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you told me that. A television first.
Wow. Right, and you heard it here.
Right.
Real George's back.
An expose. Bruce Hallenbeck.
I dig up the dirt about everybody. The latest Bond film, Never Say Never Again, I just read in Variety, had the biggest fall opening in the history of movies. Fall is usually an off-season for films. So it looks like we'll never actually be saying goodbye, Mr. Bond, apparently.
I hope not, but I'll say it. Goodbye, Mr. Bond.
This is Bruce Hallenbeck in the back room.
Your reputation precedes you, and though Her Majesty needs you, do you have any clever last words, Mr. Bond? So, Mr. Bond, we finally meet here in my fortress retreat. Pity you won't have time to stay. I admire your perseverance, but this is your last interference. I could shoot you right now, but no! There's a better way.
by Mr. Pine.
No time to suffer, no time to suffer a fool. No time to suffer, no time to suffer a fool. Don't let the wrong man in, don't let him take it for free. Don't let him do it to you, no time to suffer a fool.
Night and day, I pray the right man will come my way. Night and day, I pray the right man will come our way.
I see the wrong man coming, coming after you. Shaking you up, shaking you down. This time you have a choice, you better make it right. No time to suffer, no more time to suffer a fool.
Night and day, I pray the right man will come my way. Night and day, I pray the right man will come our way.
Thanks for tuning in to The Back Room. If you have any comments or suggestions, please write Real George, P.O. Box 724, Clifton Park, New York, 12065.